Right, so I wanted to catalog the construction of this neat project I'm doing. It's going to be a wall hanging for Roy Belts in his new pool hall. You see I've got laid out already how I'm going to do the carving. This little pool table looking frame here is made up out of premium pine. I just picked this up at Home Depot. We got some 1x2 material. I ran it through the router fence, the router table. First I did a bevel cut, just a straight bevel, and then I flipped it over and put a round over bit on it. And that's how I made the, you can see the bumper sections with that. Laid that on top of another piece of premium pine, just like that, glued it on there. You see the union here between those two. Just did a round over with a belt sander and cut the corners with a blade, an agitating saw, and getting ready to do a shallow relief carving. These letters are going to be sort of a rounded, looks sort of like neon tubing. Got a pool cue here that's going to be carved in there. And then the last piece here. So once we get this all carved up, we'll do different color stains so that it looks like a pool table. And hopefully he enjoys hanging this up in his pool hall when we get done with it. Okay, so I have started making the relief cuts around the pattern here. You can see all the Dremel relief cuts. I've decided after I did a test letter with some scrap wood. This is the same letter R as you see up here, same R. It's cross-grained, but you get the idea. And at first I did it with a traditional technique where you make a relief cut with a chisel, and then you use a gouge, and you gouge out the relief, and then you go back and you finish the piece. In this case, rounded letters to make it look like neon. What I found was that it was a multi-step process to get it to depth, and the depth was not really uniform enough to really look nice. So what I ended up doing was I put the RotoZip attachment on my Dremel and went back through, and you can see it's a whole lot easier and a lot more uniform around the letters. And then I used the gouge to get that gouged effect by gouging out the edges around it. So this was just a test just to make sure that A, the wood was carvable, and B, that the techniques that I looked up and everything that I knew anyway were going to work, and it helped me to figure out that here's a standard technique you can see right here. You make chisel cuts around the edge, and then you have to gouge them in a little bit at a time. It takes for stinking ever to do that. And over here you can see kind of a shortcut. This is with the Dremel bit, and you can get right inside here with the Dremel and clean all that out. And then you just use your chisels and cutting tools to round the edges off. So this is what the end product will look like. This was a test. It's always good to measure twice and cut once. In this case, carve once or carve twice and come up with a finished product. So I haven't quite decided yet how far the relief will go. And you can see I've got a little bit of a planning problem here. The router bit has a bit of a depth, or it has a width that exceeds the width here on the relief. And so I can't do that method up here. So up here I'm going to have to do it the old-fashioned method anyway. And again right here I didn't foresee that because it wasn't how I was going to do it when I originally laid it out. But that's okay. So there's going to be a relief probably all the way around here. The relief will come. So I'm thinking I should just relieve the whole freaking thing. Because otherwise it'll look kind of funny. Because I have to do a relief for the pool cue as well, and to have like a little triangle here and a triangle here and a triangle down here, that might look kind of bumpily. So having the whole relief, that way it'll just be the gouged edges around the outside, and then the rest will seem kind of uniformly flat. And we'll see if I think that's the way I'm going to end up doing it. But I just wanted to take another catalog here and show you where I'm at on this. We'll check back in as soon as I start pulling away the scrap material. Okay, so at this point you can see I've taken away all of the recessed areas, the relief. I've removed the relief, and you can see nice even gouge cuts all along here. Now it looks like I did this all by hand and although I did quite a bit of it by hand, what I ended up doing was I took the router bit from my Dremel, you see right here, and I set it to the right depth, right, and I made a series of grooves from the relief cuts through the thicker parts, and then I took a chisel and I broke all those pieces off, and what I ended up with was kind of I don't know, kind of like a rough edge in here, and so then I just took the gouge and I went through and gouged all that out. So a lot of the mass was done by the Dremel and the chisel. The other thing to mention on this that was really difficult was all along here is all end grain, and pushing the gouge through that end grain really hurts the hand after a little while. I had to go at it a couple of different times, and this other side, same thing. Really hard to push the gouge through that end grain. Here you can see where the P and the R and the apostrophe, they break into the relief bezel right here. The relief bezel, they get close, and so what I ended up doing was just working the bezel around it. It gets kind of close, but I think it has kind of a neat effect to it. So once we round these off, everything it'll be handled. What we're going to do with this one here is we're going to make this look like a ball, and then I'm just going to make an etch mark through here, just enough so that when we paint it or stain it, the paint will have a boundary so it won't bleed in, and I'll be able to make a 9-ball out of that. So that's where we're at tonight. I'll check back later. I'll start working on the rounding, some of the detail work. Okay, so here's the finished product. Pretty much, we're going to do a little bit of staining and finish work. But you can see I've got all the letters all carved out. That's going to be a 9-ball. We're actually going to paint that one. I've lightly sanded the edges because the effect we were trying to get here was that this is like a neon light. So this makes it look a little more rounded by sanding it a little. But I didn't want to sand it too much because I still wanted some of that rough carved edge look to it. This turned out to be kind of a challenge. You wouldn't think it, but it's actually difficult to carve a straight line. Wood has a lot of different variances in it, and as you're carving it, it wants to go different directions, and you have to kind of stay on the straight and narrow in order to get it straight. But that came out okay. The P, when we did the plunge cut in the router, was a little burned, so I had to carve that out real nice. Everything else came out really good. You can see the recessed carving matches up really good, and all the rest of the work looks like it's about done. So this is basically a shot to catch what it looked like before we stain it. Hopefully we don't mess it up too much when we stain it. Okay, just putting on the finishing touches. This is the color scheme that we agreed upon. I got it all stained up. We have 2 different colors of stain, actually 4. You can see we have a English chestnut that I used for all the letters and for the handle on the stick. The pool cue itself has no stain on the shaft, and then we used a little bit of this green stain that I purchased, and there's a story behind that. But you can see that I've already got 1 coat of Varathane on here. I may only go with the 1 coat, but I wanted to seal the ball. We're going to paint the ball with white and yellow enamel. So when that's done, we'll take one more series of pictures. But the story behind the green, the original idea, and this was the test piece, was that we were going to go with red lettering with a green background for the field, so it would look more like a pool table. But when we actually did it on a practice piece, and this is what you always should do, is have a practice piece made from the same material so you can do testing. We didn't like the way that the two conflicted, and the green was too blue, and it just didn't look right. So we went ahead, and my daughter's suggestion was, hey, it's about a wood, you should make it look like a wood piece. So that's what we ended up doing here, and it looks really nice, I think. So you can see, again, the benefits of practicing is sometimes to measure twice, cut once, and try out your stain colors on a matching piece of wood. You can see that we really saved ourselves a heartache there. Here's the actual stains that we tried before we settled on the chestnut, which is the third one here for the color of the letters. The field, the larger area in here, is used this color stain, which I believe was like an oak of some sort, a very light color, but still a nice supporting brown that brought out the brown in that chestnut. So that worked out really well. And you can see it really does pay off to have a test piece. So take my advice, don't screw it up after you spent all that time carving on it. Do a test. Take that extra time it takes to make it work out. We'll check back once we finish up with the cue ball. Here you go, finished product. Got all the glaze on it, got the paint on the 9-ball. Everything's all done. Turned out okay. Quite happy with that one.